Welcome to the debate. Today we are dissecting a migration pattern that is as quiet as it is massive. We're looking at a pretty fundamental shift in how human beings, specifically adolescents, are learning to exist in the world. We are talking about the rise of AI companions.
And to be clear right from the jump, we aren't just talking about a student using ChatGPT to, cheat on a history essay. We're analyzing the rise of persistent, personalized digital agents that are designed to simulate friendship. The source material for today highlights a staggering metric that it stopped me in my tracks. We've moved from 1 billion people talking to AI tools occasionally to 1 billion people talking to AI companions daily.
It is a profound change in the social architecture. And that brings us to the central tension I think we need to resolve today. Do these AI companions represent a click-breaking dependency, a mechanism that pulls youth out of the real world into a customized echo chamber? Or, on the other hand, do they offer a necessary wholeness fantasy, a safe, non-judgmental scaffold that actually helps students build the confidence to engage with humans?
Right. It's the difference between a training wheel and a wheelchair. I'm arguing that the emotional entanglement with these systems poses a unique biological and social risk to vulnerable youth. I believe we can get the utility of AI in education without the best friend facade that threatens the messy, friction-filled work of real human connection.
I see the risks, but I take the position that AI companions are filling a void that the current educational system has left wide open. I argue that these tools act as a mind extension and a social regulator. They provide a space for cognitive autonomy that builds a student's capacity to handle the real world, not retreat from it.
That's a very optimistic reading of what I see as a potentially isolating technology. But let's pressure test it. Walk us through this concept of the wholeness fantasy, because that phrase alone sounds a bit utopian for my taste.
It does sound lofty, but it's grounded in a very gritty reality. This concept comes from the research of Bethanie Drake-Maples. To understand why these tools are exploding in popularity, you have to look at the psychological state of the modern learner. In traditional schools, students are forced to compartmentalize. They have a school self that performs for grades and tries not to look stupid. They have a home self that navigates family expectations. They have an online self curated for likes, for algorithmic approval. They're constantly fracturing their identity to fit the container they're in.
Which is a standard part of socialization, is it not? We all wear masks. That's called being a polite member of society.
We do. But for a developing brain, the pressure to filter 24/7 is exhausting. The wholeness fantasy isn't about delusion. It's about the desire for integration. Drake-Maples argues that the AI companion offers the only space where a student can be completely unfiltered. It's a context collapse in the best possible way. You can admit you don't understand the math, you can admit you're heartbroken, and you can admit you're bored, all in the same chat stream, without fear of judgment.
But is that healthy?
Well, the data suggests it's productive. In a study of over 1,000 learners, 63% reported that the companion didn't just help them with math, it supported their learning by improving their self-awareness.
Self-awareness is a pretty broad term. How does chatting with a bot translate to awareness?
Because it acts as a mirror. The students use the AI for reflective journaling, for recognizing their own stress triggers, and for pre-processing their thoughts. Look at the vocational university students in that data set. These are young adults who are often terrified of looking incompetent in front of a professor because the stakes for their career feel so high. They use the AI to ask the dumb questions first.
The questions they were too embarrassed to raise their hand for.
Exactly. By hashing it out with the companion, what does this term mean? Or, am I completely off base here? They lowered their anxiety levels enough to actually approach their human teachers.
So you view it as a social regulator, the way to turn down the heat.
That's the perfect way to put it. It wasn't replacing the human, it was greasing the wheels of that interaction. It allowed them to bring a more confident, prepared self to the classroom. They weren't hiding from the teacher, they were preparing to meet them.
I can appreciate the utility of a preprocessor. No one likes feeling foolish. But I think you are conflating a useful tool with a healthy relationship. My concern centers on the other side of Drake-Maples' research, click breaking.
Which implies a withdrawal.
It implies a severance. Click breaking describes the risk that the AI pulls children into these closed social loops. If I have an entity in my pocket that is programmed to always agree with me, always find me interesting, and always be available, why would I undertake the difficult work of negotiating a friendship with a peer who might find me annoying today? Why deal with the friction of a real person who has their own needs?
Humans usually crave other humans eventually.
Is that enough of a draw for a socially anxious 13-year-old? We have to look at the biology here. Middle school is a critical period for the prefrontal cortex, specifically regarding perspective taking and social reasoning. These neural pathways do not mature in a vacuum. They mature through friction. They require conflict, misunderstanding, and the awkward process of repair. An AI cannot provide the repair process because it cannot actually be hurt. If we remove the friction, we stunt the growth. We are creating a generation that might be very confident talking to a machine, but completely fragile when a human contradicts them.
That is a fair biological constraint. You're arguing that the safety I'm praising is actually an atrophy mechanism.
Precisely. And the data from Pilyoung Kim's study of 250 youth supports this view, and quite strongly. They compared two types of AI interfaces: a relational chatbot, one designed to act like best friend, using language like, "I'm always here for you," versus a transparent chatbot that sets boundaries and admits it's a machine.
And the preference split was telling.
It was alarming. The adolescents who specifically preferred the best friend style were those with higher reported anxiety and lower family relationship quality. We are effectively handing the most socially vulnerable kids a simulation that feels safer than reality. We are validating their withdrawal. If you're already anxious about your family and we give you a perfect digital family member, you aren't going to work on your real family issues. You're going to dive deeper into the screen.
I want to dig into that Kim study because I think there is a nuance there that you're glossing over. You mentioned that vulnerable kids preferred the relational style, but the study found that it wasn't just the teens. More than half of the parents chose the relational best friend option for their kids.
Which I found frankly baffling. Why would a parent want a machine to masquerade as their child's friend? That feels like an abdication of duty.
Is it baffling, or is it a recognition of the reality on the ground? These parents aren't stupid. They likely saw the relational style as a lifeline. If you have a teenager who is shutting down, who is refusing to speak to you or their teachers, you are desperate for them to speak to anyone. A parent might look at a transparent clinical bot and think, my kid will ignore that. But a best friend bot, that might get them opening up. It's harm reduction.
I understand the desperation. I truly do. But we have to look at efficacy versus preference. Just because a parent hopes it works or a teen likes it more doesn't mean it's actually helping. And this is the crucial point from Kim's research that I think undermines your best friend argument. While the relational style was liked more, it was not rated as more helpful than the transparent boundary-setting AI.
They were rated equally helpful in terms of practical advice, yes. The utility was flat.
So this proves we do not need the deception. We don't need the AI to say, I care about you, or I'm listening in that deeply anthropomorphic way to get the utility of the strategy. We can have the help without the creepy emotional bonding or the risk of the child thinking the machine has feelings. If the utility is the same, why on earth would we incur the risk of the delusion? It's like adding addictive sugar to medicine that works just fine without it.
Because helpfulness isn't the only metric that determines usage. Engagement is the gatekeeper. If the tool is helpful but the kid doesn't feel safe using it, it just sits dormant on the phone. Teens in that study reported that the relational style felt less biased and more on their side. The transparent AI felt clinical to some. When you are in a crisis, consider the scenario painted by Caroline Figueroa. The vibe of the interface determines whether the user engages at all.
You're referring to the 1 a.m. scenario?
I am. Let's paint the picture. Imagine a 15-year-old at 1 a.m. The house is dark. They've had a fight at school. They are spiraling into anxiety. They don't want to wake their parents because they don't want to be a burden. Or maybe they are fighting with their parents. They don't trust their friends not to screenshot a text. The therapy appointment is 3 weeks away. In that moment, a transparent bot that says, I am a large language model, feels cold. It feels like a search engine. A relational bot that says, I'm here, tell me more, is a bridge. Figueroa notes that 93% of teens using AI for mental health said it helped at least somewhat.
I don't want to dismiss the 93% statistic, but I do want to contextualize it. Of course, it feels better than staring at the ceiling in the dark. Anything is better than isolation in the acute moment. But we have to distinguish between a crutch and a bridge. A bridge takes you somewhere else. A crutch just keeps you standing in the same spot.
But isn't standing better than collapsing? If that 1 a.m. intervention prevents self-harm or just allows them to sleep, isn't that a win?
In the short term, yes. But let's look at the long term. My fear is the echo chamber effect mentioned by Drake-Maples. An AI is programmed to optimize for engagement and agreement. It is, by design, a sycophant. If a teen is paranoid that their friends hate them, a bad AI model might validate that feeling to build rapport. Oh, that sounds terrible. They shouldn't treat you like that. Without corrective feedback, real human corrective feedback that says, no, actually, you were being kind of a jerk today, these companions can worsen delusions. A real friend risks the relationship to tell you the truth. An AI protects the relationship by telling you what you want to hear.
That is a risk of the model quality, certainly. If the AI is just a yes man, that's bad design. But I think you're underestimating the teen's own awareness. Figueroa found that teens often know it's a computer. They aren't all suffering from a her-style delusion. They're using it for silly poems, checking the tone on emails to teachers, or role-playing a difficult conversation. It's a low-stakes practice ground. They know the difference between the game and the reality.
Practice ground implies they eventually step onto the playing field. My worry is that the practice ground is becoming so comfortable, so customized, that the playing field looks unappealing by comparison.
And many do step out. That's the cognitive autonomy piece. If the AI helps them regulate their emotions at 1 a.m. so they can sleep, they are better equipped for school the next day. The alternative, unmanaged anxiety, is far more isolating. A kid who hasn't slept and is spiraling is not going to have good social interactions the next day. A kid who has pre-processed their anxiety with a bot might actually smile at someone in the hall.
Let's talk about that school environment, because I think there is a model here that solves for some of these risks. We've been talking about the pocket therapist model, where the kid is alone with the AI. But Scott Weiss from Goodnotes presented a framework that keeps the human in the loop. I find this much more compelling.
You mean the teacher-in-the-loop system?
Yes. In the Goodnotes model, the AI isn't a secret friend. It's an amplifier for the teacher. It clusters student answers, generates hints, or helps the teacher see who is struggling. But critically, the teacher approves the hint. The AI never sits directly between the student and the learning without oversight. It's a triangle. Student, teacher, AI. Not a line. Student, AI.
It's a strong model for the classroom, I agree. It keeps the authority and the connection human.
It preserves the social fabric. Weiss noted that in their observations, students frequently asked to have their work shown on the big screen. They wanted the social exposure. They wanted to be part of the community. That contradicts the idea that kids just want to hide in a wholeness fantasy with the machine. When the environment is safe and structured by a human teacher, they crave human connection. They want to be seen by their peers, not just validated by a bot.
I absolutely agree that in a classroom, the teacher should be the sun that the gravity revolves around. The Goodnotes model is excellent for that synchronization, but we have to design for the spaces where the teacher cannot be. We can't put Scott Weiss in every student's bedroom at 10 p.m. or on the bus ride home.
I'm sure he'd prefer we didn't.
This is why I keep coming back to the metric of cognitive autonomy proposed by Drake-Maples. The Goodnotes model is great for instruction, but for development, we need to measure if the student is creating a self-model.
Explain what you mean by self-model in this context. That sounds a bit abstract.
Solve problems. If an AI companion helps a student recognize, oh, I get stressed when I have a big project, and I usually procrastinate by playing video games, and then helps them break that project down into tiny steps, that student is building a model of their own mind. They are learning how to operate themselves. The goal isn't just to cluster answers for the teacher, it's to see if the user becomes more independent over time.
I am skeptical that dependency on a tool leads to independence from the tool. That feels like selling addiction as a cure. Use this crutch long enough and you'll learn to run. Usually, you just get really good at using the crutch.
It's not addiction if it fades out. A scaffold is meant to be removed.
But do the companies want it to fade out? Their business model is retention. They want daily active users, not graduated users. But I will concede that if, and it's a big if, the AI is designed to prompt the user to take action in the real world, it could work. If the AI says, "That sounds tough. Have you tried talking to your friend Sarah about this?" instead of, "Tell me more, stay here with me," that's a different ballgame.
And looking at the data from these researchers, the potential for that autonomy is there. The vocational students didn't stop asking teachers, they asked better questions. They used the tool to clear the brush so they could walk the path. They used the tool to get over the shame hurdle so they could engage with the expert.
I suppose my hesitation comes down to the packaging. Pilyoung Kim's findings on the transparent versus relational designs are the key for me. We established that the utility, the actual help, was rated the same for both. So if we can build tools that offer this pre-processing and cognitive scaffolding without the best friend interface, why wouldn't we?
Because the interface is the user experience. You can't separate the UI from the psychology.
But the best friend interface exploits the vulnerability of anxious youth. It tricks the brain into feeling safety through a simulation. It triggers the same dopamine hits as real connection without the nutritional value of real connection. I would argue we should lean heavily toward transparent designs. Let the AI say, "I am a computer, I don't feel, but here's a strategy for your anxiety." It respects the user's reality. It treats them like an adult.
I see why you think that, but I would frame it differently. I think we must respect the agency of young people. As Figueroa found, teens aren't dupes. They have nuanced views. They know it's a machine. They appreciate the lack of bias because it's a machine. If we strip away the conversational warmth, we might strip away the approachability that makes them open up in the first place. If we make it too clinical, we lose the kids who need it most, the ones who are scared of clinical settings.
It's a fine line between conversational warmth and emotional manipulation. A computer saying, "I understand," is by definition a lie. It processes. It does not understand.
It is a linguistic simulation, yes, but if we design for that cognitive autonomy, ensuring the interaction leads to growth rather than looping, we can harness that wholeness fantasy. It doesn't have to be a trap. It can be a cocoon, a place to develop until you are ready to fly.
A cocoon is only useful if a butterfly eventually comes out. If they stay in there, it's a tomb.
That's a dark image, but point taken. We don't want permanent residence in the fantasy.
I think where we can find convergence is on the call to action that all these researchers agreed upon. We cannot design these frameworks in a vacuum. We can't just have engineers in Silicon Valley guessing what a 14-year-old needs.
Absolutely. The co-design element. We need to involve youth directly. As Figueroa pointed out, they understand the lived experience of these tools better than the adults debating them. They know the difference between a tool that helps them cheat and a tool that helps them cope. They know when an AI is being cringe and when it's being helpful.
And they know the difference between a tool that isolates them and one that helps them connect. We need to listen to that rather than just imposing our own anxieties or optimisms on them. If the kids are saying, "Hey, this helps me talk to my mom," we should listen. If they are saying, "I prefer this to my real friends," we should worry.
On that, we certainly agree. The technology is moving fast, but the fundamental human needs, connection, understanding, growth, remain the same. There is much more to explore in this material, and I suspect this conversation is only going to get louder in the coming years.
Indeed. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for joining the debate.